I'm Will Buchanan, and I'm walking all the way across the country to New Hampshire in search of more freedom on a project called the Walk for Liberty. Today is October 15th, 2008, day 163. I'm continuing my way through Chicago, right now walking through South Chicago. Chicago Police, Electric Eye. I'm not sure if that's a police officer stationed on the street. It's another one of the cameras in the distance. I'm on Highway 12 again, which I haven't seen since I crossed from South Dakota into Minnesota. No peddling. You may not make money unless you have paid your bribe to the government first. I'm crossing into the political delineation of Indiana, the geographical area within which I grew up. I don't know about you, but I was really disturbed by those Chicago police cameras mounted on the street back in Chicago. I'm interrupting this video, currently in progress, with a special news bulletin. I had intended to talk today about those Chicago police cameras, which I had seen earlier, and about how this country is becoming a police state. However, coincidentally, or serendipitously, or whatever you want to call it, an incident happened to me today, which is a much more personal example of that situation. I had been walking through Whiting, Indiana, past a gigantic BP oil refinery. It was on my left, and I was walking down the supposedly public sidewalk on the other side of the street from it. There was a row of train cars behind the refinery wall. On one of the train cars it said, "Hot molten sulfur," which I thought sounded kind of funny, so I shot a clip of it to include in my video. Less than 3 minutes later, a couple cop cars pulled up behind me. At first I was thinking they might have been for me, but then I thought, I didn't do anything wrong, so I just kind of dismissed them and kept walking. Nonetheless, I tried to surreptitiously start my camera to at least audio record the situation in case it was for me. As it turns out, I didn't actually get the camera started. As a quick side note, a while back I had seen a video from Dave Ridley at ridleyreport.com in which he had an encounter with some post office police. He had tried to start recording the most heated exchange with the Postal Service cop, but in the stress of the situation, didn't press the record button quite hard enough. Dave, I know exactly how you feel. In fact, my biggest regret of the whole situation was that I didn't actually get the recording started. Since an audio recording, even a bad one, would always do a much better job of relaying the story than I could. One of the cops yelled out from behind me, "Hey, were you taking pictures of the refinery? You're not allowed to." I said, "What? Are you kidding?" He said, "Nope, it's because of the possible terrorist threat." Wow, that's ridiculous. I'm just walking across the country, shooting video as I go along. He said, "Yep, you're gonna have to erase any pictures you took of the refinery, or we're gonna have to confiscate your camera." At that point, he asked to see my ID, and I told him I wasn't carrying any. "What? You're walking across the country and you're not carrying any ID? What if you get hit by a bus or something?" I told him that my wife was with me, and if that happened, that she would find out soon enough. He responded, "Where? Where is she?" Then I calmly explained that she was in our RV up ahead of me. He said, "Okay then, what's your name?" And reluctantly, I gave it to him. Then he asked me my address, and I said, "Well, I don't have one. I'm walking across the country." To which he retorted, "What, you're homeless?" I said, "No, I'm just walking across the country." "Well, where do you sleep at night?" I said, "We have an RV. Do you want my last address from when I lived in Hawaii? And I'm not making this up, but he responded, "What? You walked from Hawaii?" And I said, "No, I started walking from the West Coast." "Are you sure you don't have any ID?" And he started terry patting my pockets. "Hey, I didn't give you permission to do that." And he said, "Well, you're in Indiana now." I told him I grew up in Indiana, and he said, "Wow, good for you." He felt my left pocket and said, "Hey, isn't that your wallet?" "No, it's probably just my pocket PC." He said, "Nope, it's softer than that. Why don't you take it out?" And I stalled by pulling out my sheet of directions for the day. "It's bigger than that. You don't want us to arrest you, do you? We'll drag you down to the station and then your whole walk will be over." Not wanting to get arrested, at that point I pulled the contents of my pocket out. He said, "What? Aren't those business cards? Don't those have your name on them?" And I said, "Yes, but it's not government ID." And then he asked what my date of birth was, and I said, "Do I have to give that to you?" He said no, and at first he seemed contented with that. But then his partner piped in, "If you don't give us your date of birth, we'll arrest you." I said, "So you're telling me that if I don't give you my date of birth, that you'll arrest me?" At that point, the original cop said, "Yep, that's what I'm saying." I said, "Okay, fine, I'll give it." Then the original cop said, "If I have to pull out this pad one more time, I'm gonna arrest you." So I finally gave him the date, and he handed the piece of paper to the other cop to go run my name. Then he said, "Why are you trying to be so uncooperative?" And I said, "I wasn't. I'm just walking across the country, trying to mind my own business." "Well, you weren't minding your own business. You were filming the BP refinery." And I told him I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. "Well, you're gonna have to erase the images of the refinery, but those are the only ones you have to erase." Not wanting to get my camera confiscated, I reluctantly agreed to. Although I found it interesting that he didn't actually watch me as I was erasing them and just took my word for it that I had done it. It was at that point that I noticed that the camera hadn't been recording the whole time, but I decided to start it then to at least capture the rest of the encounter. After I told him I had erased the video, his attitude completely changed. He was much more buddy-buddy like, "Oh, so you're walking across the country, huh? Is anyone sponsoring you? No? You're just doing it on your own? Oh, okay, that's cool." Then the check came back clean and he said I was free to go. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that before, but that was certainly the first encounter with cops I've had where they've threatened to arrest me. If I could do it over again, I might have done things differently. Like, for example, I might have taken him up on his threat to arrest me, as Brooks suggested I should have done. But with practice, and maybe after I get to New Hampshire, I'll be able to stick to my guns better. So, are we in a police state? I'll let you be the judge. I walked about 17 1/3 miles. Here's my GPS position. This is Will Buchanan for donate.walkforliberty.com, signing off.